Good morning, golf fans. It's your boy, Gsluke, here with our round 3 live stream for this week's American Express. Going to go through Showdown and props for today and make sure you're ready to go. Go out there, have yourself a moving day, and hopefully make it yet again another profitable day for our props. So we'll start off with a look at the golf course, go over our DFS player pool. Just give you an idea of the schedule. At the end is when we'll talk about props. So it'll be about a half an hour, maybe 45-minute live stream. So sit back, grab your coffee if you got one on hand, and let's wake up and talk some golf. So first off, welcome on in, everyone. Looks like we've got a few people getting down into the stream here. And we'll start off with a look at the golf courses, which for round 2, we saw the Nicklaus course play the easiest, which I didn't completely think it'd be the easiest out of the 3. I thought it'd be a little bit closer to La Quinta, but it actually played slightly easier than what we had with that course, which was the easiest in round 1. So you can see here, played 3.85 under. The Nicklaus course played 4.25 under, and that's compared to round 1, where this was slightly harder than La Quinta, right? You can see 3.35 for round 1 over there at the Nicklaus, as opposed to 4.5 over there at La Quinta. Main reason for that was the talent gap difference, right? All of the best players in the world are the guys playing on Nicklaus yesterday. And of course, they were at La Quinta over there on Thursday. So now that we get over here to Saturday's action, right? Cut day, by the way, for anyone that's not familiar with the format, they're all going to be at the stadium course. So while the stadium course only played 3 under par yesterday, this might actually end up the easiest course out of the bunch today. And it's not because conditions are going to change, right? It's not like they're rigging it for all of your top end players. It's just that their talent gap difference, right, especially compared to the guys that'll be playing over on the Nicklaus course today, is a shot and a half, sometimes even a 2-stroke difference. So expect to see these averages kind of normalize today. I actually think that the Nicklaus course might go from the easiest track down to the hardest out of the 3. And once again, it's not like they're changing conditions. It's the same pin locations, pretty much the same exact weather that we've had the first 2 days. It's all about who's playing each course. So we'll talk about which courses I'm targeting for DFS. But here for Saturday's action, right, I'd say La Quinta and Nicklaus are going to be the easiest 2. But because there are so many guys playing at the stadium course, it's going to be tough to just try and hunker down on one of these tracks. So for me, we'll talk about the strategy here in just a little bit. It's not quite as large of an edge as we might have had for rounds 1 and 2 Showdown. In terms of our weather, like I've already alluded to, it looks absolutely perfect. If we take a look at the Saturday HRRR forecast, you'll see we have sub 5-6 mile-an-hour winds for pretty much the entire day, and your wind gusts aren't all that much higher. So these conditions, we've seen them the first 2 days, right? It's not going to be any curveball that we have to deal with there. We can take a look at these, round 1 and 2 averages, get a pretty good idea of what to expect here. Which, once again, we're going to talk strategy here in a second, is going to help us trying to figure out what to do for round 3. But for props is also going to be useful, as we're not going to have a lot of moving parts. So with that being said, let's talk about the DFS strategy, which I think here for round 3 is especially intriguing. So yesterday we had all these guys in La Quinta. I believe it was JT Post and Eric Cole, who ended up playing on a golf course, right, that played harder than the Nicklaus tournament course. And JT Post and Eric Cole were like 55% owned in some of the GBPs, right? I mentioned I thought they might be like 35, maybe 40%. Well, they came in even higher owned than that. We're playing a harder course than the Nicklaus guys. And Eric Cole got there, right? Not so much with JT Post and didn't really have that smash day, but Eric Cole had a hell of a day himself. So the people that played that 55, 60% ended up getting there with an Eric Cole, which I think is going to shape the slate a little bit, right? You have all these guys or people out there that think that La Quinta is by far the easiest golf course, and it's not, right? And now, while I do think it is it's the easiest out of the bunch, but it's not a massive margin, right? Like we were mentioning before, I think La Quinta might play to like a 3.8 under par average again. I think the Nicklaus tournament course might play like 3.5 under par. The stadium course, and this is a little bit of a hot take, might be the lowest of the bunch. It might play a whole 4 strokes under par here for Saturday's action, which if that means no one's going to play the Scotties, the Cantlays, the Xander Schauffele's, there's an argument to be made that they're the players you should be taking, right? I mean, let's look at the ownership here. They've got the whole ownership tab up for everyone in the field. You see I've got Sanjay at 34%. Guys like JT Poston, right, who's on the Nicklaus course at 29%. Minwoo, you have Eric Cole down here, right, getting a ton of steam. And you have Jason Day, who's playing well, 4.3%. You have Justin Thomas, right? He's a third of the ownership of a Sanjay M over there on the stadium course. Xander, Cantlay, all of these guys that are just world-class players that could easily go low, right? The issue with the stadium course, and I actually just want to circle back to this, it's not that it's a course you can't make birdies on. There are plenty of birdies out there. It's how many doubles and water balls you can make. If you've seen an overhead view of the stadium course, it's got a lot of water around it. It's got a few longer par threes that can lead to some bogeys, but you're still going to make a shit ton of birdies. I mean, let's look through this, right? 21% birdie rate, 21% birdie rate. These are all par fours, right? 21% birdie rate, par three with a 19%. This is the hardest of all the par fives, right? And it still plays to a 58% birdie rate. The thing that separates this course is the bogey rate, right? I mean, look at this par five, right? There's a 14% bogey rate there. Hole number 6, right, had what, a 21% bogey rate. The bogey rate around here is much higher at the other two than at the other two courses. But our elite tier players are more than capable of going out there and getting a bogey-free round. They've got the ball striking they need, right? It's why a Scotty Scheffler, I think, is a pretty decent play on this slate. Because if they go out there and they avoid those time bombs, they can make nearly just as many birdies as the other courses. And of course, it might be a little bit, might have to be a little bit sharper, right? Obviously, if you make a mistake, you're going to get punished for it at the stadium course. But I do think you're going to see some ceiling performances out of it. So if you're only playing guys from La Quinta, I think that would be a mistake out here for round 3. It's not that I think that it's going to play harder, right, than the stadium, which may actually happen. Like I said, I put that hot take out there that the stadium might actually have a better scoring average. Again, that's just all talent level stuff. But if you're only playing these La Quinta guys, you're going to be playing mega chalk, right? Like literally all your guys up top are going to be like 30, 40% owned. And in the large field GPP, I can almost assure you that one of these stadium guys is going to get there. So it's going to be tough to pick the right one, right? I'm not going to get a ton of exposure to the guys playing the quote unquote hardest golf course, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see a handful of them get there, right? Especially when it's Scotty, Cantlay, Xander that are playing on that golf course. JT, down here, right? You got like a Jason Day to choose from. Sam Burns after his 11 under par round. Tony Finau, Chris Kirk. You're going to see one or two of those guys in the optimal. And if you're somebody that's only playing La Quinta, you might run into some issues there. So when we talk about the line of construction section, we'll talk about maybe incorporating one or two of these guys from the stadium. But you can see my core plays, right, are these chalky players, right? So a Sanjay, right, I'm building around. A Tom Kim, for example, I'm going to be building around. Minwoo Lee, a Cameron Davis down here, right, at 22% ownership. But they're far from my only plays, is what I want to point out. There are leverage pieces you're going to have to get to. The ownership drops off pretty quickly when you get down here into the 6 and 7K range. I mean, you'll see somebody down here like a Keith Mitchell, right? He's not 20% owned. You can get much more reasonable numbers on these 7K players. But up top, it's pretty atrocious, pretty disgusting. How highly owned some of these players are going to be. So that's my take up top. I think you should be trying to mix in a few of these lower owned darts. And they will be lower owned. For round 2 showdown, ownership was extremely polarized. You had guys like Scotty Scheffler at sub 20%. Even Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele were at sub 20% after going absolutely nuclear. So imagine after they didn't even have the best kind of days, now that they're on the quote unquote hardest golf course, it's going to be even more polarized, right? People aren't going to play those players, which, if all things were equal, if we had equal ownership on all of these guys up here, I would 100% only be playing the Sanjays, the Tom Kims, the Minwoos that are on La Quinta, but that's not the case, right? They're 3, sometimes 4 times higher owned in a few spots, which changes up the calculus, right? When somebody's 3 times higher owned, that's essentially implying that they have a 3 times higher hit rate than some of the guys around them, and that's not true. That's just not the case. It's probably closer to like a 65-35 split, something like that, which would lead you to think they should be like double the ownership, right, as the other players if they have double the hit rate. But you're seeing a lot more emphasis on these guys. Down here in the 7K range, you've got a lot of La Quinta players I'm taking shots on. Like I said before, the ownership's not too out of hand. So Keith Mitchell, high birdie upside player, is the type of guy that I'm looking at here for Saturday. Matthew Pavon, another player I'm looking to get to, just high pedigree player, right? Played well at the Sony Open, is only 5.7% owned. So maybe a little bit surprising there. Part of that is because Will Zalatoris is going to get some attention. Looked a lot better out there for Friday than he did for Thursday. So I think it has a lot to do with that there. In terms of other plays, we've got Alejandro Tosti down here at $7,000. Absolute flusher, somebody that's aggressive, kind of what we're looking for out there for a showdown contest, and only 3.8% owned. You got Dylan Wu down here, right? $6,700, 2.1% ownership. Somebody that can fill it up with the flat stick, get hot with the irons, and is playing on the La Quinta course. And then lastly, we've got Callum Turan down here at $6,600, 0.9% ownership, so essentially unowned. And again, a player that can get hot in a hurry, right? High birdie percentage player, usually very much so boom or bust. And if he's going to make the cut, and then this is like an added little bonus, he's got to shoot like 10 under par, right? He's got to shoot a 62 to go out there and make it to the weekend. Has nothing to lose at this point. So don't be surprised if you see Callum Turan either go out there, post something real low, or potentially blow up and shoot over par. So in showdown kind of contests, especially in large field GPPs, where you're looking to embrace that kind of volatility, I don't mind that, right? I don't mind that a player has a wide range of outcomes because that also means that he has the upside on the other end of the spectrum. Let's see. That's it for plays we're going to go over for DFS. And as you noticed, these are all La Quinta guys, right? There are going to be some Nicklaus tournament guys I'm also mixing in towards the bottom of the board. But up top is where I'm potentially taking the stadium guys, right? I'm not taking these stadium guys on the 7K range like Aaron Rye, no thank you, right? These guys that are playing the harder golf course, there's not a big enough ownership difference down here in the 7K range to warrant making those pivots. It's more so up top, right? If every player you're taking is going to be like 30% owned up top, you're going to have a hard time with duplicating yourself. And let's say you started with like a Sanjay, a Tom Kim, and then a Minwoo Lee. You can make that kind of lineup work in terms of your salary, but your last three spots are going to have to be mega different, right? You're going to have to go out there, force in guys that are sub 1% owned at probably two of those three spots. So it's a little bit of trade-offs, right? A little bit of pros and cons that you have to weigh, right? When trying to take this chalk up top. And for me, right, I think the best way to do this is just to kind of limit yourself to two of them, right? So let's say you want to start with a Sanjay and then take Cameron Davis, right, as your other piece of chalk on La Quinta. Maybe you start with a Sanjay Tom Kim. Maybe it's a, Tom Kim Minwoo, right? There's a million different ways you could run that. I would try to limit it to two of them. There's four to choose from, right? From up here from $8,000 plus that are playing on La Quinta. If you're playing three of them, you're going to have a really hard time differentiating. If you're playing two, you probably get away with that just fine, right? You throw in one or two pivots, you get that product ownership down, and you should be good for even the largest of field GPPs. So that's my take on the showdown slate. It's a lot more nuanced because all of the good players are on the hardest golf course. And like I said, it's probably the showdown slate with the least amount of an edge, right? Just being honest out there, just being transparent about it. I would love if there was a massive edge out there for round three as well. But because the ownership is the way that it is out there, I think it's a pretty efficient slate, right? The guys that should be higher owned, right? Like a Sanjay, these guys playing on La Quinta are higher owned, right? You got Eric Cole down here at nearly 33% himself. Like that's where they should be, right? That makes a whole lot of sense to me. And I think that's why we're seeing it. Thoughts on Hadley and Hubbard. So let's go ahead and look at their scores. Let's go ahead and double back on that. I haven't seen much of them play, so I don't have any takes on the eye test portion of things. But let's go ahead and bring up their stat profile. I'm going to see how they're putting, putts per green in regulation, all that sort of fun stuff. And I'll give you a take. So 1 second while I bring this up on the leaderboard. So we've got Hadley and who was the other one? And Hubbard. Okay, the two H's. All right, let's find them on here. I'm pretty sure they're both playing decently. Let's see. And I'm excited for the cut line, right? To actually be able to focus on one golf course tomorrow. But yeah, one more day of madness before we get there. All right, there's Mark Hubbard. Mark Hubbard's 8 under par, right? Played really well out there for Friday. He played on La Quinta. So what course does that mean he's going to? I think that means he's going to the Nicklaus tournament course out there for Sunday. So if he's on the Nicklaus tournament course, don't hate that for him, right? Let's see. Let's get his shots gained from the stadium course. Do we not have that? We can't access that there. I know where we can. We can go to Data Golf, and they'll have his round from the stadium course. So 1 second while I bring that up. All right. So Mark Hubbard at 8 under par. Where are you at, buddy? Am I blind? I don't see him on here. Oh, there he is. They don't have his stuff up here. Do we have to select round one? Yeah, that's it. All right, well, select round one, look at his stats. So from round one, right, this was on Thursday, so this was a couple days ago. So keep that in mind when we're looking at these numbers. He ended up losing strokes putting, which it's kind of on brand, right? He's a little bit inconsistent with the flat stick. Gained a bunch on approach, love that. And then a slight loser off the tee. I could get there, right? Let's look at his stats from yesterday. So yesterday had 6 birdies, had 12 pars. So obviously bogey-free round. That's pretty sweet. But most importantly, he went 15 of 18 greens regulation. That's huge. And then the driver was a little bit off. So it kind of looks like it was a similar profile, right? Was not the best off the tee, right? Was below average in terms of his driving accuracy, but his greens regulation were through the roof, right? Was likely gaining in that category. And then the putts for greens regulation was actually about average for the field. So he wasn't gaining to the field when he went out there and made all these birdies. I could totally see him going off for round 3. So I like Mark Hubbard. Now let's find Chesson Hadley for you. I have no idea what his current score is. I could double check on the other tab, but it'll take just as long to find. You could just control F it. All right. Well, not Chad Ramey, not Hadwin, Chesson Hadley. So Chesson Hadley's 13 under par. My goodness, what a start to the week for him. And let's see how he played yesterday. So yesterday was on Nicklaus. Went out there, shot 6 under par, had 7 birdies, 1 bogey. And then for round 1, when he was on La Quinta, went out there and shot 7 under par. The issue with Chesson Hadley, right, is that he's playing the stadium course. Unlike some of those top-end players that I think you can take chances on, I'm here for round 3. I would probably avoid a guy like Chesson Hadley, right? Somebody that's not that elite tier player that might get into some of that ball striking trouble around the water at the stadium. So I like Hubbard a lot more than Hadley, but both of them are playing well, right? Let me check Hadley's ownership for you too. He's playing well, so I also think his ownership's up there. Oh, only 1.9%. So the ownership's just fine. You don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I like Hubbard more, man. What do I think the cut line will be? Data Golf thinks it'll be 13 under par. I have a hard time disagreeing with them. They have pretty accurate modeling out there. So 13, maybe 12, 11 under par, something like that. It's going to be a crazy cut line. Normally the cut line is well under par here, but I mean, 12, 11 under par is just on another level. So something in that range, man, right around there. Let's see. Justin Suh and Akshay. I like Justin Suh this day. Honestly, this whole week I like Justin Suh. Right, Justin Suh is an absolute flusher with the putter. Unfortunately, he's on the stadium course, right? So kind of like Chesson Hadley, I couldn't recommend playing him for tomorrow because he's not an elite tier player on that golf course. So I'd probably stay away there. And then you said Akshay. Akshay is another stadium guy. You could play him because he's more of like an elite tier player, but yeah, I would avoid those guys. What's going on, Sam? Hopefully you're having a solid start to your morning. Apologize there. All right, let's talk about some lineup construction. So when you're building these lineups, let me show you how you can avoid some of that chalk, right? So like we're still going to play the Sunjays today. We're still going to take guys like Minwoo over there on the solid golf course. But rather than taking those two and then going down here and taking Cam Davis as a third man in, right, I think you should limit it to 2 of those chalky plays. The main reason for that is, let me just show you how hard it is to differentiate. Let's go ahead and add somebody towards the top of the 7K range, lower 8s. Let's go ahead and throw in like a Bo Hostler, right, that I know is not on the stadium course. Let's go down here in the middle tier range and throw in who's not on stadium. I know Will Zalatoris isn't, right? You can throw him into this kind of lineup. You've got these 3 chalky plays up here, and then you got a Hostler who's like 6-7%. You've got a Will Zalatoris who's like 10% owned himself. You would have to probably leave salary on the table, and you'd probably have to find somebody that's sub 1% owned to get away with this lineup in the large field GPP. You might duplicate yourself, right, unless you're leaving that salary on the table. And furthermore, you're going to have a lot of issues with leverage. Right? You have 3 guys that are going to be owned in like half of lineups. Your single entries, your higher dollar stuff, guys like Sanjay, Minwoo, and Cam Davis might be like 65, 70% owned. So you just got to play that game theory angle if you're in those large contests. But even in the smaller field stuff, you're going to have a really hard time getting leverage if your entire lineup is guys that are going to be highly owned. So rather than taking those 3 chalkier guys, maybe you go up there and rather than a Cam Davis, you take a pivot, right? You go up here, you try and find somebody that's a little bit lower owned. Let me double check my projections and find somebody that fits that role. So let's see. We got Cam Davis there on La Quinta. A lot of guys playing the stadium course around him. But if we just went down to a Taylor Montgomery, I've got Taylor Montgomery at 13% ownership. I'd feel a lot better about this lineup. Montgomery loves this golf course, played well here last year, right? And has the form coming in from Sony, some of the other events during the fall swing. He's $8,200 and he's like half the ownership of a Cam Davis. So just by making that one little pivot, I feel a lot better about this lineup. You probably still should leave like $100 on the table, right? Maybe you go down here and you throw in like a Pavon, right? Or leave $200 on the table and take a Pavon at $7,300. You can get away with this kind of lineup as opposed to the other lineup where you have those 3 chalky players. And it's not like we're forcing in any super low-owned guys, right? Like Hosser's like 5-6%, Pavon's like 5% himself. You can get away with this because you don't have that 3-person core of like 40% owned players. So that's how I would attack it up top. If you're going to take those 3 chalky guys, you can probably make it work. Let's go ahead and just like show you how you'd have to force it in. But like you're taking like ultra pivots, right? So down here in this range, right, you got to find somebody who's like sub 5%. James Hahn, let me see what course he's on. I know James Hahn, by the way, was a late add to the field because of a withdrawal. He wasn't in the player pool yesterday at all, which was kind of disappointing, but they ended up adding him. What is he, $7,600? So he's expensive too. I got him at 1.5% ownership. Like you'd have to force in a guy like him who's like $1,000 too expensive, is like sub 1% owned. Down here at like $7,400. Let's see, what course is Eckroat on? Let me double check that. Eckroat's on La Quinta, right? So you could throw him into a lineup here. Down at 7,200, maybe you leave like 100 on the table. You throw in like a Matt Kuchar or something like that. Let me double check Kuchar's course. Yeah, Kuchar's also on La Quinta. This kind of lineup just looks so much more ugly than the other one that I'd rather just take one of those pivots up top. So I'm a large field GPP player. I am going to play in a few high dollar single entries. So in the large field GPP, right, I've got to get different to get my product ownership down. But in my higher dollar single entries, I don't want to share 3 spots with 70% of the field. That just doesn't sound like a good time to me. You have to have the absolute nuts with your other 3 spots to win in that kind of contest. Whereas, you know, if I'm a little bit more different about it up top, and there's one of these top 3 that I'm playing in bulk today. And I posted them on the Patreon, right? I've got to keep a little bit behind the paywall. But if my guy up top hits, that's going to be sub like 15% owned in a stud up there, then I'm going to be, I mean, infinite leverage to the field, right? I can play all the Sanjay I want as a second man in. I can play all the Tom Kim, the Minwoo I want, right, as my second man in. And I'm going to have no issues with differentiation. So I think I just scrolled over his name on accident. You might know who I'm playing today. But it has a lot to do with just how high pedigree of a player they are. Let's see. Makes sense with the course edge. Yeah, it's I would go Hubbard because of that. Good call on the JT Scheffler under on strokes. Of course. Thank you, Jason, for the little shout out there. Let's run it back today. Jaeger or Kashmir Keith? It's a good question. I like both of them. Jaeger's on the solid course. Same thing with Kashmir Keith. I would say that Jaeger, if you're in a cash contest, maybe a single entry, is a little bit safer, right? You know, safe's a dangerous word to use out there in PGA DFS. But Kashmir Keith has a wide range of outcomes, right? He's going at every single pin, is an extremely aggressive player. So I have both of them in my pool. I'll be playing both today. If you're feeling a little bit safer, you're okay taking some ownership. Steven Jaeger's at 18.1%, whereas somebody like Keith, I've got at 5.8%. So if you're in the large field GPP, you got to get a little different. Then maybe you throw Keith into a lineup. If you have the salary, you don't really care about the ownership, then go with Steven Jaeger. One for each scenario, I would say. Is it more important having golfers from stadium course than yesterday do the skill level? Yeah, that's what I was saying before, Sam, right? You can still mix in a few guys from the stadium course, but if you're going to do it with your studs. It's the main reason for that too isn't even just because of like the game theory edge, which is honestly the game theory edge alone would be enough to go out there and play some of the stadium course guys, but it's also because of the makeup of the golf course. I mentioned before, and I'll just show it again here. that you still have a ton of birdies that are made at the stadium course. It's just that there's a lot of blow up holes too. There's water, I believe, on 10 of the 18 holes. Three of the par fives have three of the par threes have water on them, and they're like 220-yard approach shots. So that's the main difference, right? You've got a 21% bogey rate there. This par five, and it's a freaking par five, right, has a 14% bogey rate. Hole number 13 here is a 17%. Hole number 18, right, is a 14% bogey rate. If we had just took out the bogeys this week, right, and we're just talking about pure birdie production, number one's La Quinta. It's about 6 birdies per round. Nicklaus Tournament course hovers between 5.5 and 5.7 birdies. And then the stadium course here is like 5.3, right? So there's slight differences between these two players. Just say these courses, right? Obviously, La Quinta, you have a slightly higher average score than what you're going to get at Nicklaus Tournament course and the stadium course. But now that all the studs are playing at the stadium course, you're going to get a few that pop off, right? That go out there, gain 3, maybe 4 birdies to the field, right? Go out there, make 8 or 9 birdies. That's going to happen. And if you don't have that guy in the large field GPP, right, especially if you're playing against like 20,000 other people, you're not going to take down that contest. So if you're playing in like a single entry or cash, right, maybe you lean into the course edge a little bit more, right, and only take guys from La Quinta. But if you're playing in a large field GPP, I have the sneaking suspicion that there's going to be at least 2 of those stadium guys that absolutely go off today. So that's my take on it. I think you're spot on there. You're landing on a last man in of Jason Day. Last man in of Jason Day. How do you have that kind of salary? Or I'm assuming maybe you just picked your value plays before. That's probably what it is. Obviously, you can't have him as your least expensive guy. But let's see. He's played well on that course. What is his projected ownership? So I got you. So his ownership's low. I've got him at 4.3%. So if you're worried about the ownership, right, or needing to pivot off of it, you don't need to, right? He's going to get you plenty different to the field. He's $9,200. The issue would be, right, is that you're taking a guy on the stadium course. But if you're going to do that, you do it with some of these top-end players. And with Jason Day even more so than everyone else, I mean, he's a mega pivot, right? I've still got like 12% ownership on somebody like a JT. I've still got like 14% on Sam Burns, right? Even after he's playing on the stadium course. So I don't know. I don't want to talk you off of it. I think if you have found an edge, right? You've seen that he's played well at that course every single year. I don't think you have to shy away from that. I think you can lean into that all you want there. What's going on, Birdie? He said, thanks, Luke. A little chilly in New York today. Got to wear the cashmere. Good luck. I like it. I like you living on the edge a little bit, right? Going out there, taking Keith, and stay warm. It's not cold down here in Florida, but I feel for you guys. The rest of the country is like an Arctic tundra right now. I don't miss the North. I used to go to school up north. I was born in Pittsburgh, raised there, went to school up there too. So I'm familiar with the cold. I just don't miss it whatsoever. That's for damn sure. All right, let's talk about some props now, which honestly, guys, this board is mega mispriced. And there have been some bumps, as there's always going to be with golf props, but not nearly enough of them. So we're probably going to find a couple slips here that you guys can go with. And honestly, it's one of the bigger edges that I think we've had for quite some time. So let me bring up FanDuel. I'm also going to bring up Draftkings so we can do a little bit of line comparison for the sake of these props. And we'll probably put together a few slips. I've already maxed. If this gives you an idea for the kind of edge I think's out there, I've maxed out every single player on the board. I think there's only 2 that I haven't bet on, and that's because the projections for them are pretty accurate. It's like Tom Kim and Sanjay that I didn't bet on over here for round 3. Everyone else in Underdog, I have quite literally maxed out. Like I cannot bet anymore on them. So let me bring up Underdog, and we'll go through some of that. Let's see, Poston too chalky. I don't think so. I think you can get away with it. He's on the Nicklaus course, so I've got him at like 29%. Kind of like I was saying with Tom Kim and Sanjay, take like 2 of those guys at most, right? Don't make your lineup like 3-4 guys that are 30% owned, because in some contests, guys like JT Poston might be 40% owned, right? So I don't think he's too chalky that you have to avoid him, Patrick. It's more so that when you use him, you just got to be a little bit careful, right? You got to think about that with the rest of your build, and probably limit it to like 2 super chalky guys, right? I would probably leave it there. If you go with 3, that would probably be pushing it a little bit, but like just mix in some mega low owned plays, right? If you took 3 of them, just take a few guys that are sub 2% and you'd be fine there too. All right. In terms of these prop plays, let's just get right on into it. So Jason Day, they've got at 66.5 strokes. He's playing on La Quinta. Does not make sense that they would have a guy projected for 5.5 under par. Like I mentioned, I do think the stadium course is going to play like 3.5 under par here today. It's going to get easier because of the talent level, right, going up with a lot of the studs going to the stadium course. But even if it was a 4 under par average, right, let's give it an entire stroke difference, right, between rounds 2 and 3. For Jason Day to go out there and cover this line, right, it's 66.5. He'd have to gain 2 strokes to the field, right, which is not impossible, right? Don't get me wrong, right? It's not like these are so mispriced that they're all going to hit, right? But for somebody like Jason Day to gain 2 strokes to the field is something that he's going to do less than 50% of the time, right? He's not been very consistent of late. He's been okay at this golf course over the years, but this entire board is priced like that, right? The guys like Minwoo, I maybe don't like as much for fades as they're playing over there. I think he's on the La Quinta course today, but these guys that are on the stadium course, they're being projected at the same numbers as they were on La Quinta in the Nicklaus course. And even more so, honestly, like guys like Jason Day yesterday were at 67.5 strokes. Even on Nicklaus, I was a little bit hesitant to take him for an under because he'd still have to gain like a stroke and a half to the field to cover. Now that he has to gain over 2 strokes, right, to get to a -6 score, like I just don't understand it. And to give you an idea of like the sportsbook odds, they completely agree with me, right? They obviously still think there's going to be low scores, right, with the perfect weather, but not nearly as low as what they're calling for. So to give you an idea here, right, like Jason Day is at 67.5 on FanDuel, and he's juiced -140 towards the over, right? And I think 67.5 is a fair projection. In fact, if they had him at 67.5, I might even consider taking an under on a Jason Day, but at 66.5, it's for sure the over, right? You got a stroke discrepancy and that sportsbook juice in your favor. And now let's go over here in DraftKings and let's find his odds there. Oh my God. There's Day in every single group. So let's find just Jason. There we go. Right. So he's at that same number. You can see he's also juiced slightly towards the over. Unless people out there are just going out there and betting based on this being an easy golf tournament. I know there were a few people on Twitter yesterday that were taking unders at 66.5 on a few players. They were like, oh, he only has to shoot -4 to hit. It's a par 72, right? So I don't want to call out the exact capper on Twitter that said that, but if your Twitter capper is telling you that guys only have to shoot 4 under to cover a 66.5 stroke line, then they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. Just had to get that out there. It's the truth. And I've seen a few people say that. Different down low, for sure, right? You just get a little bit different down low, right? If you take a JT Poston. So for sure, Patrick. And there's enough guys to do that. There's even like Quinta guys, right? You can take it sub 2% ownership and get different with. So if you want to lean into the weather edge, I just say like make sure you're fading the chalk in the 7K range, right? If you want to really lean into that. And I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Let's see. So we got this Jason Day over. These birdie props are also well too high. You could argue that anyone at 7 birdies is well too high of a projection, but there are quite a few names we can take on here. So let's find one of my favorites that's playing the stadium course. Let's see. So Siwoo was one of the guys I was eyeing up. Hadbin's playing in La Quinta, so maybe we stick to Siwoo there. Let's see. They had Ricky at 6.5. They bumped him down to 6. They had JT Poston at 7 birdies. And I've got to say, like, how the hell do they put a guy like JT Poston at a 7 birdie projection? Like, I know he's playing the La Quinta course, which plays to like a 6 birdie average, but to cover a 7 birdie projection like he was at last night, he's got to make 8 birdies, right? That's 2.5 more birdies than the field average at that golf course. And JT Poston's like a decent golfer, right? Don't get me wrong. He's one of my boys. I love playing him. He's like a top 30 player in the world. Agree with all of that. But a 7 birdie or better projection is ludicrous. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't care if John Rahm is playing the best golf of his life on this golf course. You don't put somebody at 7 birdies. In fact, last year, Underdog Prize Picks, right? John Rahm, when he was out there going out there to win the golf tournament, he had birdie lines at most of like 6 birdies, right? And now we've got an entire board priced at least 6.5 birdie. I mean, it makes no sense. Like, there are going to be guys that go over. Don't get me wrong. Like I mentioned, it's an easy course. You're going to get some ceiling rounds, but to project everyone on Underdog to have a ceiling round is ludicrous. Like I said, it's just going to be a ton of values for taking fades. So I hate fading golfers. It's not the most fun sweat, right? You're sitting there every time they birdie, you get all pissed off that they made a birdie. But the guy's got to make 7 birdies to go over. So we have a lot of, wiggle room there to work with. And this is definitely a slip you can enter. Let's see. They bumped a lot of my favorites, which makes sense, right? Obviously, the more value the prop on it, the more people that are going to play it. And you see that. But yeah, these two are insane value. You go over here to Prize Picks. You'll see they have the board priced a little bit more modestly, right? So they have like Patrick Cantlay at 6.5, Xander at 6.5, right? Over there in Underdog, right? Cantlay was at 7 birdies. You had guys like Tony Finau at 6 over here, Wyndham, right? Sam Burns at 6 birdies. They're over here at 6.5 on Underdog. So it's not like the pricing is way off, right? It's not like we're dealing with whole birdie discrepancies between the two boards. But even at 6 birdies over here, right? I mean, I might slightly lean towards the over for some of the guys at 6, but it'd be a slight lean, if anything, right? Not anything more than that. In terms of your strokes, they're also a lot more conservative over here on Prize Picks. So a lot of the guys they have at 66.5, right, are up here at 67 strokes. So you've got JT, right, Tony Finau here, Chris Kirk, all at 67 strokes. Jason Day, right, that over we took at 66.5 is at 67.5, right, over there on Prize Picks. So that's an entire birdie discrepancy. You can see some of the guys they have at the Nicklaus course right are at 67 projections, but I'm avoiding them for the most part tomorrow. Mostly taking my fades out there for the stadium. There are a few Nicklaus guys that I'm mixing in, but for the most part, it's the hardest golf course, and they're projecting it for the same type of scoring average as days 1 and 2. It's almost as if this lines maker for Underdog doesn't know that there's a 3-course setup. It doesn't know that the course conditions are going to vary from track to track. So that's something you can take advantage of, right? Especially over here on the Underdog side. And on Prize Picks, I know we had a slip yesterday that we did. We're probably going to stick to Underdog, right? There's just not as much value over here. In fact, I haven't even entered anything in Underdog as of now. I should say Prize Picks as of now. And it might stick like that just because of the line value over there. Of course, Patrick, I've got you. I think that's all I've got for this live stream, though. I've got some stuff to do this morning. I've got to get some NFL stuff done. If you have any last second questions, I'll stall here for 30 seconds to a minute. So you can go ahead and throw that down in chat. But we've got some football on today, which I'm stoked about. Obviously, this golf that we can sweat and watch this afternoon. And then some more playoff football tomorrow in golf. So should be a fun 2 days. We've got UFC tonight too. So for anyone that watches the fights, maybe give me your take for the main card. I haven't bet anything for UFC yet. I definitely will be because it's a whole lot of fun. It's one of the best sweats out there, whether you're outright betting, whether you're playing DFS. MMA is an absolute blast. So we've got that, golf, football. I mean, it's going to be a good day. Let's put it that way. So let's get into. Did my stalling get any questions? It did. There we go. And good reminder. Let's look at Hard Rock Bet. We can take a few more minutes to do that. Why not? Let me log into Hard Rock and then I'll share my screen. We'll do that. They have the 2-factor authentication, which I really like over there in Hard Rock, but it does take longer to sign in. So little pros and cons as per anything. So, all right, I'm signed in. Let me bring up the American Express. Let's go through it. Someone put an MMA bets down here. I love it. Let's see. What is it? Gillian Robertson by sub in round 2 or 3. I'll tail. I'll do it. Jason, I don't do enough research out there for MMA. I just like watching it, like the sweat. For some reason, that has translated very well to my MMA DFS success. I usually just fade the chop for MMA DFS and then just play a scattershot approach on some of the guys that are leverage plays. And it's worked out really, really well. MMA DFS, there's a huge edge out there. If you know your shit, right, you can obviously pick fights a lot better. But if you just play the game theory approach for MMA DFS, you can absolutely print. You'll have some slates that go sideways, that's for sure, right? It's like if the chalk goes out there and hits and he's like 75% owned, that never really sits well. But every once in a while, you just go out there and bink GPPs. In the last year, I think I had like 6 MMA GPP wins, and I don't even play every slate. I play like once a month. So I think I played like maybe 14 MMA slates last year. In 2023, I had like 6 GPP wins. So I think, honestly, that's my highest win rate of any sport that I've had. So I don't know why I don't play MMA DFS more. I've had people ask me to do content, but maybe in the future. Let's take a look at these two balls, though, for Mr. Mio down there. So in terms of our matchup bets, I like these ones where you don't have to worry about the tie, right? So down here, they have these 2-ball matchups with ties. Unfortunately, some of these 18-hole match bets aren't the same on every single book, but I prefer them just because you don't have to worry about that tie, right? If you tie and you lose a 2-ball, it just pisses me the hell off. Probably not the only one that feels that way, to be frank. Up here with Cantlay and Scheffler, we took Scheffler yesterday at even money, and he ended up tying Patrick Cantlay, so we got our money back. I think I'm just going to run it back. I mean, why wouldn't we, right? It's the same odds. It's the same exact situation. I'd actually say it might even be a little bit more favored towards Scotty Scheffler this time. Main reason being is that this is a ball striking course, right? They're playing the stadium course. There's a lot of water around there. And for somebody like Scotty Scheffler that like doesn't miss a shot, I mean, that's going to bode extremely well for him. So in terms of our 2-balls, I'm running back the same exact bet we had yesterday, right? We had a $100 bet in, ended up getting refunded. Why not go back to the well? So I like that one for sure. Most books, I believe, will have that too. Should have that bet available. Let's see. Anything else that really sticks out? Yeah, that's a pretty even matchup. Steven Yeager versus Matthew Neesmith. Let me double check on Data Golf to see their thoughts. They have really good betting tools on Data Golf. They do a really good job with their matchups. And I usually like to look at them. And let's see. So they've got Steven Yeager. Yeah, they don't love that one as much. Actually, the one where ties are void, they like it up to -125. And what was his odds? 1 second. This might be one, actually. This might be something we're able to do. So Steven Yeager's at -120. We're going to take this too. Put a little 100 sack on this one too. So Steven Yeager over Matthew Neesmith. The thing I like about these 18-hole match bets is that, again, a tie is voided, right? So that was huge for us yesterday with that Cantlay versus Scheffler one. And Steven Yeager, just a much higher floor player than what we have here with Matthew Neesmith. And a lot of the different books around the industry have this at -125 to -130 odds. So I definitely like that one there. Let's see. What else do we got? Getting a phone call over here. I got to decline it. We're on stream. I can't be taking a phone call right now. Let's see. So Jason Day Lowry. Yeah, I'll stay away from that. Davis versus Putnam. Let's see. Yeah, that one's pretty even. Let's see. What else do we got? Burgers Altorse. Not betting on the crippled matchup. And then you have Kuchar versus Nick Taylor. This might be something. Let's find Kuch on here. And I want the Nick Taylor side. That's for damn sure. So this is a ties or void matchup. -115 is plus EV for them. You know what? I'm not going to bet this because Nick Taylor had a device on his elbow yesterday while he was warming up. I was about to go out there, add the $100 bet on this, but yesterday during PGA Tour Live, guys, he was using some sort of like brace on his right elbow. I mentioned in my Discord, I was like, is he hurt or something? And I think Nick said he wasn't hurt. He was like just fine or something like that. I think he said he was just Canadian, right? That's why he was using the brace. But I don't trust that so much. I feel like you don't use a brace like that if you're feeling 100%. I'm still playing them for Showdown today, so I'm still doing that at least. But I'm not going to get some extra exposure. That kind of scares me. Let's see. All these are 2 balls with ties. Yeah, let's just go with those 2. So we've got the Steven Yeager matchup against Matthew Neesmith. That should be a pretty solid edge right there. And then the Scotty Scheffler versus Patrick Cantlay. So let's run that. Checking up on our betting card this week. Toasty is doing okay. Right? He's got to do quite a bit to get into the top 20. So this is probably toast. Looks like Alejandro Toasty. Sam Ryder's in a decent position for a top 20, so he's got to play well over the weekend. Hopefully he can get there for us. Steven Yeager's in position for a top 20, right? Goes out there, plays well this weekend. He could easily get that for us too. And then Eric Cole, JT, Cantlay, and Scheffler are all in the mix too. So betting card this week, again, it wasn't a lot of outrights, right? It was a lot of these, placement position sort of bets. We're in a pretty decent spot, right? And I'm kind of glad that we didn't take outrights because this golf tournament, right, it's going to be won at like 30 under par. It's going to be some random dude that ends up winning. So I'm kind of glad that we took these kind of bets because I think there's going to be a lot of tilted people out there that when somebody like Paul Barjan ends up winning, people aren't going to be too happy. Let's put it that way. So that's all I've got. Let's see what's going on. Make sure when you're using DG for betting, it has an implied percentage of plus 0.05. Yeah, all of those did, Sam. And exactly, right? They're not perfect with their projections either. I have to say, like, their implied edges on there, like, are all just based on their projections. So if you look at Aaron Rye for any one given event or any one given round, he's almost always favored because for whatever reason, their algorithm loves the guy. Like, Aaron Rye is like the second coming of Jesus, according to the Data Golf projections. So yeah, you got to take everything there with a grain of salt because it's just their opinion on the course. It's their opinion on the models. I think they do a pretty good job for the most part, but yeah, it's not the gospel, right? Let's put it that way. That's all I've got for this, though. Hopefully you guys feel a little bit more prepared for today. Smash the like button on the way out of here. Subscribe so you don't miss any of the content in the future. Round 4, we'll be doing the same thing. Probably going live at like the same time, like 9:30 a.m. Eastern. So stop on by then. Let's go ahead, get after it, and have ourselves a moving day. Best of luck with those lineups, any prop slips, any bets you're entering. And I'll see you guys for tomorrow.